Good evening there, everybody. What is happening? Hopefully, you all are having a wonderful day today. So, when it comes down to it, I thought that I would review this little video that I thought was very particularly interesting. And this is going to be a video overall by Mr. Dante's Boxing Nation, who, of course, is a boxing channel that I have tended to review here and there. And in this video, we're going to be talking about probably one of the more talented fighters within the 160 pound division overall, and also who could potentially move up to 168 pounds, and also who could be possibly a future opponent of one of the best pound for pound fighters in the world, in my opinion, Mr. Saul Canelo Alvarez. But of course, Mr. Jermall Charlo, in recent news, apparently he has stated that he is allegedly interested in facing Demetrius Andrade, David Benavidez, Gennady Golovkin, and Chris Eubank Jr. Do I believe that he is actually serious about taking all those fights? No, I don't. I don't think that he's serious at all. And even in his quotations, he said all in all that, apparently he'll even fight Oscar De La Hoya. So what that tells me is that Jermall Charlo, what he really said was a little bit to get people off of his back and a little bit more in terms of jest or a joke than what he was actually serious. Do I believe that Jermall Charlo is actually serious about facing a lot of the top contenders other than Canelo Alvarez or Gennady Golovkin? No, I do not. And a lot of people may disagree, but it just is what it is. But anyways, Mr. Dante's Boxing Nation, he's going to be talking about Jermall Charlo, and you're going to see how different he treats someone like a Jermall Charlo compared to likes that of someone like a Canelo Alvarez or someone overall that he may not like, someone like a Tyson Fury, a Vasily Lomachenko. And listen, when it comes to boxing, I believe all in all that no matter where you go, since most people especially tend to be that of over fanatical fanboys, more than likely you're going to see someone with a racial issue almost no matter where you go. But these channels, once again, they love to propagate themselves. They love to overall tell you that they're the super duper logical and nothing about the truth channel when it comes down to it, or all about the truth. That is not really what they're about. Dante has as much of an objective or an agenda as ESPN or what Fox Sports News does. And it's the same thing with these LDBC and new media channels. But anyways, we're going to see what Mr. Dante has to say. Let's tune in.
Dante's Boxing Nation, what's going on, guys? So Jermall Charlo, who originally was scheduled to fight against Majes Selecki next, that fight got canceled or postponed. And now Jermall Charlo, he just recently went live, and he said that he wants to fight Demetrius Andrade. But he didn't just say he wants to fight him. He said he wants to fight him next. And that's something we've never...
Well, Jermall Charlo, basically what he said is that he said, fuck it, I'll fight all of them. I'll fight Benavidez, I'll fight Andrade, I'll fight Oscar De La Hoya if I have to. Do I believe that he's serious? No. It just sounds like he's just talking a whole lot of shit just to get a certain amount of the fans and the pressure off of his back. That's really all it sounds like to me. Listen, I've been saying the same thing about Jermall Charlo for the past couple of years. There's only really been two fights that he's been mainly interested in against true top contenders. That's been against Gennady Golovkin and that's been against Canelo Alvarez. And the reason why he's mainly been interested in those fights is because those are the fights, all in all, that pretty much would give him the most amount of clout and would give him the most amount of prestige. And listen, at the end of the day, I get it. It's a good thing that you're going after those fights. But if you can't seem to get those fights, you are going to have to go after other fights that are going to put you in a better position. Just like a Devin Haney did, just like an Errol Spence Jr. did. But Jermall Charlo, and I've been saying this for the past couple of years, obviously he doesn't want the Canelo Alvarez or Gennady Golovkin fight bad enough because he's not willing to take on some of the other top contenders to possibly get there. He certainly is not willing to face Demetrius Andrade. He's never been willing to face him. And he is not the only fighter within those weight divisions that's not been willing to face him. And he also, even though he called out David Benavidez, he certainly is not willing to face him. So Jermall Charlo, when it comes down to it, what do I believe he's going to do? I believe that he's going to wait a little bit more longer to see if he can get that Canelo Alvarez fight. Because whether Canelo Alvarez wins or loses the Dimitri Bivol fight, and I'm sure a certain amount of fighters out there believe that Canelo will probably lose the Dimitri Bivol rematch, more than likely, David Benavidez and Jermall Charlo after that, they probably will be on top of the platter overall to debatably face Canelo Alvarez. So we'll see what happens.
Heard from Jermall Charlo. In fact,
and of course, that's if Canelo Alvarez ends up losing that rematch.
Never even really heard him say he actually wants the Andrade fight. So regardless of how serious he is, This is the very first time that he has said, I want to fight Andre and I want to fight him next. Just keep in mind, when it came to Errol Spence, for years, Errol Spence had always said that he was going to fight Terrence Crawford eventually. But it wasn't until he beat your Dennis Ugas, or maybe leading up to that fight, that was the first time that Errol Spence said he wants Terrence Crawford next. In fact,
right, but those are not really comparable situations, Dante. And once again, I find it interesting that he gives the leeway to Mr. Jermall Charlo, but when it comes to a Canelo or a Tyson Fury, all of a sudden these fighters, without any prior information whatsoever, he just alleges that they're ducking, no matter what their track record is. But when it comes down to all in all, what I will say is this. The comparison between the Errol Spence Jr. situation and the Jermall Charlo situation is not comparable. And the reason why that is because all Errol Spence Jr. said was to get in the ring with Terrence Bud Crawford was that he was going to have to beat the guys on his side of the street, meaning with the PBC. And he ended up doing that, and now Errol Spence has taken strides to actually make the fight with Terrence Bud Crawford. Jermall Charlo has never even tried to make a stride with Demetrius Andrade or David Benavidez. He's never even tried once. So those situations are not comparable. It's not like Jermall Charlo is facing people overall on his side of the street, and now all in all, he's finally deciding to face Demetrius Andrade and all sort of stuff. So those situations are not really that comparable. Because Jermall Charlo, besides Golovkin and Canelo Alvarez, he isn't really interested in any of the top contenders. And once again, it's admirable, in my opinion, somewhat to go after those two fighters. But if you're not getting those two fights, you can't just use that as an excuse overall. Oh, well, I don't want these other top contenders because I'm going after the main dog. Because a lot of the times that can be used as an excuse. Sean Porter and Terrence Bud Crawford, when it came down to it, Terrence Crawford at one point in time tried to use that excuse when he did not want to face Sean Porter. But then eventually, of course, Terrence Crawford did face Sean Porter, so I have to give him credit for that. But once again, and I've been saying this for a very long time, if you're a fighter out there that believes that you cannot get the main cash cow, what you're going to have to do is face a great top contender to put yourself in a very, good position. Because that is what the fighters who are serious about getting a big fight do.
Errol Spence, he said the only opponent he's focused on is Terrence Crawford. And that's why the situation is usually a little bit different when a fighter uses the word next.
I'm Redwood, and I'm the baddest tree in the forest.
I want to fight Andrade, Demetrius Andrade next. So y'all stop talking. Y'all niggas in the comments, y'all acting weird. Yeah, y'all acting weird.
Jermall Charlo looks like he has a couple of drinks within him. He always does this shit. He does this every 2 years. He gets drunk or whatever. He takes overall a couple of sips of wine or whatever the hell that he drinks when it comes down to it. Has a few beers. And then he gets on live Facebook or whatever the hell he does. And then he says, oh, I'm going to face Demetrius Andrade. And then he gets sober and comes to his senses. Just is what it is. Do I think that Jermall Charlo is actually going to face Demetrius Andrade next? Not at all. This is the same pattern that I've seen out of Jermall Charlo for the past several years. And now, Dante, for example, usually the fighter that he'll criticize within those weight divisions is Mr. Canelo Alvarez. And he'll say, oh, well, Canelo only does this and he only does this. Canelo Alvarez has fought legitimate, decent fighters when they've been at the best point in their career, or at least very close to it. When he fought Miguel Cotto was 33 years old, and he was the Ring Magazine champion of the middleweight division. When he fought Lara was at the best point in his career. When he fought Austin Trout was at the best point in his career. Billy Joe Saunders, Caleb Plant, Callum Smith, all those fighters are at the best point in their career. Danny Jacobs was at the best point in his career. Okay, all those fighters that I just mentioned were at the best point in their career. So they can try to degrade whatever Canelo Alvarez has done. Listen, I get it. If you think all in all that ESPN may promote certain things, especially against black fighters, listen, all that is well and good. I understand that. But we have to be logical and objective at the end of the day. And if you're going to constantly use that, especially because of your emotional and racial issue, to tear down certain fighters, then that means you can't be a trusted, logical, and objective commentator. So it just is what it is. Anyway.
His name is Andrade. I want to fight him next. he don't even want to fight. Who else I want to fight? GGG. GGG should not be fighting Canelo. Canelo already beat your ass, so fight me now, so I can at least get my clout up.
Let me tell you overall, in my view, how a prime Gennady Golovkin versus a prime Jermall Charlo fight would look. And I think that it would end up with Gennady Golovkin at least winning the fight, probably around 8 rounds to 4. I think Gennady Golovkin would have pushed Jermall Charlo back, and I think all in all that more than likely he would have completely outboxed him. That's my view. Now, at the age of whatever Gennady Golovkin is at the current moment in time, Jermall Charlo may have more of a chance to beat him now. Do I think that Jermall Charlo ever would have beat Gennady Golovkin? No, I do not. Now, of course, one does have to state that Gennady Golovkin within the past few years, he really has not been interested in Demetrius Andrade or Jermall Charlo. Just like how Jermall Charlo has not been interested in David Benavidez or Demetrius Andrade. Because Gennady Golovkin is waiting for the same thing as what a Jermall Charlo is, that Canelo Alvarez lottery ticket. But anyway.
He on the scooter? He was on the scooter? I'm not riding that fucking scooter. I'm gonna fall. Who did that? Who put that back up? I just realized this right now. I just realized that shit right there. Yeah. You did it?
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, because I'm really like that. Like, I'm really like that. But say whatever y'all want to say. Huh? I'm not going. Y'all going. Want the list? I'm not going. I'm not fucking going. I don't care. I'm not going. I'm not going. Okay. I gotta go, bro. Shit game. Alright, y'all. I gotta go, man. I'm getting way too many phone calls. As soon as I go live, I start getting all these phone calls. Like, it's so weird. It's so weird. Are y'all haters? Are y'all haters?
Well, Jermall Charlo, I do assume that more than likely because you are a high-level fighter, at least to a degree, that more than likely you are receiving some sort of hatred in certain areas. But let's also be real, Mr. Jermall Charlo. A certain amount of people can see right through your bullshit just as much as I can. And let's be real, you are not very excited to possibly get in the ring with a Demetrius Andrade or overall a David Benavidez. But yeah, you call out the fighters that you believe that you can beat. So it is what it is. Either that or you're waiting for the lottery ticket. Anyway.
He don't want to fight me. He a little bitty ass dude. Mugia ain't even learned enough yet. Fight me. Fight me then. I want to fight Oscar De La Hoya, David Benavidez, Demetrius Andrade, and who else? And Chris Eubank, whatever his name is. GGG too. I'll fight GG. Alright? Don't ask me ever again, okay? I just told y'all the shit. Alright? I told y'all what's popping. Alright?
This motherfucker is drunk off his ass. Let me see if I can fast forward this and let me see if this goes somewhere. Anyway.
He wants to fight Andrade, Gennady Golovkin, and even Eubank. But once again, he only used the word next when it came to Demetrius Andrade. Now something else.
Right, Dante, but come on. You know damn well that pretty much was a smokescreen overall to basically diffuse some of the fans when it comes down to it. That's what fighters on the know do whenever they don't feel like facing an opponent. They'll say, oh, I'll fight whoever next. I'll fight this guy next. I'll fight that guy next. All that was a defense mechanism from Jermall Charlo because he is insecure overall about the fact that many people overall keep commenting about him overall allegedly avoiding Demetrius Andrade, which he is. He is avoiding Demetrius Andrade. And on top of that, not only is he avoiding Demetrius Andrade, he's avoiding that of David Benavidez and a few other fighters as well. Now listen, some people may say, well, You've in the past about Canelo Alvarez stated that you don't think that Canelo Alvarez is super interested in Andrade, so is Canelo avoiding Andrade? What I will say is this: Canelo Alvarez, in my view, he certainly does not seem super duper excited to face Andrade. If you wanted to say that Canelo has avoided Andrade, I really don't really have a problem with that. But I can't really get after Canelo that much because he's fought fighters usually pretty consistently over that have been on the A grade level. Certain fighters that I may even believe to have been better than Demetrius Andrade. Even if we're talking about someone like a Caleb Plant, I would say that Andrade and Plant at their best are around on the same level. So it is what it is, at least certain, to a degree. Some people may disagree, but it just is what it is. When we talk about Mr. Jermall Charlo, the problem with him is that he ain't really interested in facing a lot of these top contenders who could potentially get him to a better place. So that's how you know that he's only interested in really facing Canelo Alvarez and Gennady Golovkin. So anyway.
Of note, you guys may recall I made a video, I reported the story when Jermall Charlo, when he did an interview with Brian Custer, and Brian Custer had asked him, this was a while ago, Brian asked him, would you fight David Benavidez? And Jermall, he answered yes. He said, I'm going to fight him and I'm going to stop him. It will not go the distance. He too easy to hit. But later on in that same interview,
I used to think that was a 50-50 fight, but not only taking a look at Jermall Charlo's confidence, I believe, against David Benavidez, which I don't believe that he has a lot of confidence against someone like David Benavidez, but also taking a look at the size, all in all, that David Benavidez has, I believe more than likely that he would beat Jermall Charlo. Especially Jermall Charlo, in my view, don't get me wrong, he is an A-grade fighter, but he's about on the A- level, in my opinion, for a middleweight fighter. I don't see him on the same level as Canelo, really not even that close. I don't see him on the same level as a prime Gennady Golovkin. I don't see him on the same level, really, as a prime Erislandy Lara. In my opinion, if he goes in the ring against David Benavidez is more than likely going to pummel him. But we'll see what happens.
Surprisingly, Jermall Charlo, he said he would actually rather fight Demetrius Andrade instead of David Benavidez, meaning if he had the option of fighting both, he would rather fight Demetrius Andrade.
That's right, he said that a while ago, and the reason overall why he said that is basically to get a certain amount of the fans off of his back, to sound logical when it came down to when really all it was another smoke screen when it comes down to it. Once again, if you know what Jermall Charlo was truly about, it's not that hard to see what the hell he's doing. All he basically said is, well, why would I go up to 168 when I have Demetrius Andrade overall at 160 and I could unify that division? That's cool. So what moves have you done to make sure that you're going to get that fight with Demetrius Andrade? You see, that point would actually make some damn sense if you actually were trying to face Demetrius Andrade or face any of the top contenders other than Gennady Golovkin and Canelo Alvarez, but you're clearly not interested in doing that.
Which, if we're all putting things in order, it makes sense for Jermall to fight Demetrius Andrade first. He's already fighting at 160. He would have to move up to 168 to fight.
Yes, it would make more sense, Dante. That is the truth. But at the end of the day, how long ago was that? I mean, that interview, all in all, when it comes down to it, I believe, was about a year ago. It may have even been over a year ago. So what moves has Jermall Charlo made to get in the ring with Demetrius Andrade? He hasn't made any moves. So at the end of the day, your track record does have to be a part of who you are overall, or we have to somewhat count overall, what your moves are, compared to your track record. And what Jermall Charlo's track record has stated is that when it comes to certain top contenders, he's not willing to face them. Now, certain people, once again, they'll say, well, what about Canelo? Once again, I can't really get after Canelo Alvarez that much because, in my view, he usually eventually plans to face Jermall Charlo and David Benavidez eventually. The only fighter that Canelo Alvarez does not seem interested in is Demetrius Andrade. But Canelo has always shown me, because of his track record, that he's usually going to get in the ring with those guys, whether the fans like it or not when it comes down to it. He's gotten in the ring with Lara, Cotto, Kovalev, Plant, Smith, Saunders, Trout. He's gotten in the ring with Mayweather. He's gotten in the ring, I believe, with Danny Jacobs. He's gotten in the ring with all those guys. So I'm sorry, but Canelo Alvarez, at least with me, his track record has shown me that he usually likes to get in the ring with a lot of top contenders. Jermall Charlo has not shown me that.
David Benavidez. I've always said, if Jermall Charlo cannot get, or if he's not going to fight Demetrius Andrade, and he can't get the Golovkin fight or the Canelo Alvarez fight, the next big fight that would get Jermall Charlo the clout that he's looking for. I don't know if you guys caught that in this live feed, but Jermall Charlo said, a fight with Golovkin or other names, those are the type of fights that would get me the clout that I'm looking for. He said that. Listen, there's no doubt about it. A fight against Demetrius Andrade, or I should say beating Demetrius Andrade, beating David Benavidez, any of these fighters would definitely give Jermall Charlo the additional clout that he's looking for.
I would agree with you, Dante, but I don't think that Jermall Charlo believes that he can beat those two fighters, because every time that he talks about those two fighters, you can clearly tell that there's a little bit of nervous energy there. It's almost like when Gervonta Tank Davis, when people would ask him about Vasily Lomachenko early on in his career, and he would always shit his pants. It just is what it is. Or when it came to certain fighters facing Errol Spence Jr., like Danny Garcia facing Errol Spence before he had the belts.
When it comes to Jermall
Or Keith Thurman.
brother Jermall Charlo, he already has an unlimited amount of great competition to fight against when it comes to his division.
Well, not really. And once again, this is not me trying to degrade Jermall. He certainly overall has taken bigger fights for his division than what Jermall has for his. But Jermall, in my view, we're really going to see how good he is once he gets in the ring with a true A-grade fighter that might be able to test his abilities. Now, Brian Gassano, in my view, was an A-grade fighter. But I'm talking about more along the lines of a Terrence Crawford and Errol Spence Jr. Because there's really no one there besides Brian Gassano at the 154-pound division that could threaten his reign. I mean, Tony Harrison is not really an A-grade fighter. I'm trying to think overall who else is there. Julian J-Rock Williams is done. Jarrett Hurd is done when it comes down to it. Who the hell is that one kid? Tim Tszyu. He's not going to do anything in that division, in my opinion, at least not beat Jermall Charlo. If we're talking about Sebastian Fondura, he's a good fighter for now, but his style, in my opinion, is going to wear out very, very quickly, as all those pressure fighters usually do that get hit way too much. That division, in my opinion, it pretty much is meant for Jermall Charlo to dominate because there's just no one there, in my opinion, that truly threatens him.
There used to be a time where it seemed like the only way Jermall Charlo can really take his career to the next level in terms of getting a big win was against Golovkin or Canelo Alvarez. But now Jermall, he has a lot more options.
Well, not really, in my opinion, because Jermall Charlo, he's really always had that option against Demetrius Andrade. Now, Andrade does have to be blamed, I believe, for one time turning down the Jermall Charlo fight. Now, of course, a certain amount of people may say, well, that was because they didn't get offered a lot of money and, Andrade thought that he was getting screwed, right? But if you're a person overall who's going to think 10 years later on down the line, or if you're a person all in all that believes that, that overall that you want big fights, that fight, no matter how much money it is for, eventually later on you're going to earn more money later on down the line because you're going to get that big fight. So Andrade, part of the reason why he can't get big fights, he has to blame himself as well.
And when I say options, I'm talking about big payday options. The Demetrius Andrade fight and the David Benavidez fight. Those are big, huge paydays that will really, really pay off, especially if Jermall can beat one of those guys. And now the fact that Demetrius Andrade is a free agent, that means it's extremely easy to make that fight. So let's see how serious Jermall Charlo is. That's all I got for now.
I can tell you how serious he is, Dante. He's on a level of 0. He is not serious about the Demetrius Andrade fight at all. And I kind of understand to a degree why you're trying to promote it, I believe, because you like Jermall Charlo. But listen, at the end of the day, what Jermall Charlo's track record shows me is that he's not interested in Andrade and he's not interested in David Benavidez. He wants the Canelo fight. That's all he wants. And to be quite honest with you, I think that Jermall Charlo is willing to wait for it, even with all the criticism. So it is what it is.
Guys, I'm on to the next one. Fellas,
But anyways, that's really about it for today. I just thought that I would review that. And overall, do I believe that Jermall Charlo is serious about facing Andrade or David Benavidez? Not at all. I think he's very serious about facing Canelo Alvarez, because Canelo Alvarez, of course, who wouldn't want to get a fight against Canelo Alvarez? Facing Canelo Alvarez would almost be like facing Manny Pacquiao or Floyd Mayweather Jr. Of course, you're going to want an opportunity against them because they're going to give you a big paycheck. And on top of that, it's really a win-win situation. Even if you lose the fight, you lost to one of the greatest fighters of all time, and debatably, all in all, looked at as one of the top 5 pound-for-pound fighters within the sport, maybe even number 1. But if you lose to someone like an Andrade or a Benavidez, it's going to look all that much more worse for you. That's why Mikey Garcia wouldn't face someone like a Vasily Lomachenko, but he went up to face Errol Spence Jr., because he did not want to lose to someone. Well, Lomachenko, to be fair, he was starting to be ranked within the top 10 pound for pound by that time. But he did not want to face Lomachenko because Lomachenko was about his own same size. And Mikey said, wow, if I get my ass kicked against this dude, there's going to be no excuses. Where if I do get beat against Errol Spence Jr., when it comes down to it, not only do I have an excuse, but even if I face Lomachenko after that, and if I do get beat, I can always use the excuse, well, I was never the same fighter. So that's what these fighters think about. It is what it is. Anyways, that's really about it for today. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see what Mr. Jermall Charlo does. I believe that he is going to wait for that Canelo Alvarez fight, but we'll see what happens. That's really about it for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll talk to you all later.